So what both of these these previous slides bring up is the importance for us to listen with intention, to listen with purpose, not just to hear the words as they come to us and respond by flying by the seat of our pants. That's how most conversation happens. And it's probably okay for most objective listening opportunities. But in the ones that are empathetic, we need to be a little bit more thoughtful, sensitive, intentional. So now we want to talk about a particular process called the high impact listening process that you can employ in any situation. That's especially important anytime there's a high kind of emotional component for your client or someone else in your life. Anytime where there's an opportunity to look behind the words and recognize that there's something bigger that's happening in the conversation. 5 things that you can mix and match in any order. There's no particular order here. 1, meet them where they are. This is a mindset issue. Recognize that high impact listening is a combination of mindset and skill set. Skill set could be, for example, the do's and don'ts we just talked about, and some of the actions listed here. But it goes along with the mindset. And the first piece of the mindset is, I need to meet the client where he or she is, wherever that is, whether it's about soccer games, whether it's about cancer diagnosis, whether it's about a child fell down and broke his wrist yesterday. Doesn't matter what it is. When the client brings to you something, the client is bringing his or her whole life with you at that particular moment. Meet them where they are. Second, ask the right questions. Listening is always about questions. The Med-C model is one that you can use at any time to learn more about your client's motivations, their expectations, disappointments that they want to avoid, and what concerns them. These are great questions to ask because they get at the emotional experience of the individual. Motivations talks to or speaks to their particular excitement and joy. The disappointments is about what makes them sad. And concerns obviously is about what makes them worried or nervous. When you can connect on that particular level and not just how many posts are going to go up and how long is this going to be marketed, that kind of thing. When you're getting beyond the regular day-to-day stuff that goes along with selling the house and you're talking about the whole person, that's powerful. Third, have to be looking for the message behind the words. That is, recognize that sometimes there is a message behind the words. And when you suspect that there might be, ask a question about it. Fourth, rephrase what's important to them. Say it in your own words. So what I'm hearing you saying is most important to you is getting this particular price. Please tell me a little bit more about why that price is what you feel you need. A simple invitation like that to have them speak a little bit more about what's behind the price that they think they want to get gives you broad insight into what their motivation is, what their life looks like from that particular moment, from that particular viewpoint for them, and gives them a powerful experience of being heard. Finally, stay with them as long as they need. You may not want to talk about the football game or the baseball game or something else in their life. It may have no interest for you at all, but when it has interest for your client, then it has interest for you, or it ought to. If you want to draw people into sending people to you a year from today, 3 years from today, 5 years today, they need to have had an experience, a powerful experience of being heard by you. And if they have, they're going to tell you, they're going to say, thank you for listening. If I guarantee you, if your client comes in and says, my son scored 2 goals, and you have a great 10, 15-minute conversation about soccer, almost certain at the end of that time, the person's going to say, thank you for listening, or you're a good listener. And so here's a challenge I want to put out to all of you. If you don't hear the words, you're a good listener, or thank you for listening, if you don't hear either of those phrases once a month, I promise you, you're not listening closely enough. We have the opportunity to have an empathetic listening conversation with somebody in our life virtually every day. And that means by the end of the month, you've had dozens of opportunities to make that connection. And if no one ever says that to you, what's happening for them is they haven't had a powerful enough experience that they feel compelled to say anything. But when somebody does say a simple thing like, thank you for listening, what they're really saying is, I've had a powerful experience of being listened to you today. And money can't buy that. Joy in life can't buy that. It's an extremely powerful piece of feedback for you. Now you may ask, how much is all this stuff worth? Can I put a price on all of these skills? I can absolutely say yes. The price is $37,000 an hour. How do I get to that price? Well, very simply. I had a client who called me up one time. She wasn't a client at the time. She called me up. She didn't know me. I didn't know her. She had gotten my name from a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, 4 degrees of separation. I knew nothing about her company. She knew nothing about me, but she called me up one day and said, I got your name from somewhere and I've got this problem and I'd like to have you come in and just, tell me how you think you would solve the problem. So I said, fine. So I went and met the lady. We sat down and she said, I've got this kind of coaching issue or this development issue in my company. And she started talking about it a little bit. She said, now, what would you do? I need to know what you would do about this. And I said, well, can I just ask a few questions first so I'm clear? So I started putting these kinds of skills into action. And I asked questions and I asked more questions and I followed up. And as she spoke, I rephrased what it is I heard from her. We talked about the tactics. We talked about what she thought. We talked about what she felt. And at the end of the time, I hadn't said anything about how I was going to solve the problem for her. I had said nothing about what I was going to do. But what she said was, I think you're the right person to help us with this problem. And she said, this is a $20,000 contract. Would you like to sign it? And I said, absolutely. Thank you very much. 3 days later, she calls me up. We haven't even started work on the contract yet. She says, I got another problem over here that I'd like to hear how you could solve this problem for me. So I said, absolutely. I'll come talk with you. So I went over there again, spent another 30 minutes listening. At the end of that, she said, I think you're the right person to help us with this one. Hand me a $17,000 contract. So I earned $37,000 for 1 hour worth of listening. Now, of course, I had to follow through with the coaching later. But the point is, listening gets results because listening creates a powerful experience in the other when you're doing it well. None of us can do it perfectly. We can always get better. It's something that we need some practice with. So let's move on to some takeaways from today's conversation. A couple of takeaways. First, it's important to remember that clients have transactional needs and relational needs. And when someone comes to you, you need to decide or think about which it is. And if you're not sure, just ask. Tell me, what's the real crux of this issue for me? Or what would you like me to do for you? What can I do for you? Something like that helps you get at what it is they're looking for. Second, empathetic listening today creates referrals tomorrow, or $37,000 in contracts. Take your pick. Third, practice makes perfect. Listening is a lifelong skill. It's not a talent. It's not something that we're either born with or not born with. It's a skill. Anyone can develop better listening habits through practice, and we should be practicing our whole lives. Because honestly, this is the goodies. This is part of the goodies of life, is being in a relationship with someone else and being connected. Finally, staying connected to your client's experience is most important. There's nothing more important to you than being able to have a connected experience with your client for the success of your business. You may think you're in the real estate business. Really, you're in the connection business. You're in the relationship business. And if your client feels a powerful relationship, a connected relationship, an extraordinary relationship with you, your business succeeds. Same thing whether it's a doctor or a hairdresser or anyone else. You're all in the relationship business. So how do we do this? How do we practice? Well, one way to practice is to play the question game. We're going to do that in just a minute. What I want to say is, kind of as we leave and we get into the game here in just a minute, I'm going to bring Chirag back for this. Challenge yourself over the next 30 days on your own listening. As you're listening to your client, catch yourself and ask yourself, am I in subjective listening right now? Or catch yourself in one of your do's or don'ts. Did I just turn off my listening because I thought where the client was going to go, and that was kind of the end of my listening for that particular moment? You have to kind of bring an attention and a self-awareness to your listening skills so that then you can practice them on a conscious level. One way to do that is through the listening game. Chirag and I are going to demonstrate it for you right now. Chirag?
All right, guys, we want to see how good we can really listen. And when we do this in coaching, we generally use a timer. And here's how the game works. I'm going to share something with David. It's his job to listen to it, then ask me a question back. Now, I've done this with a lot of different people, and it's scary to see sometimes you can't even have a conversation without talking. So I'm going to say to David, this was a great presentation today. What part of it do you think impact people the most?
For me, I would probably say the do's and the don'ts because they tend to hit home. Would you agree?
You know, I would agree the do's and don'ts really have massive impact. What part of the people do you think really love the subjective, objective, and empathetic listening?
I think it's the people who care most about growing the business and recognize that it's going to take an investment on their side, not just a financial investment, but the investment of developing relationships. I think that those people are the ones who are willing to take the extra time and trouble to kind of go there and recognize the value of doing so. Um, I wonder what you thought about the last part, the high impact listening question, listening comment. I'm sorry, high impact listening model that we shared.
I really like the high impact listening model, and it's always great to give people a process. I wonder how many people will actually follow the process based on the previous sessions you've taught.
Well, my experience is everyone's going to try it, and they're going to try it for too short a period of time. People hear a presentation like this and they recognize, yeah, you know what? Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I know listening is really important. I have to do that better. And they'll really focus on it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 week. And then, unfortunately, some of them are going to go back to business as usual. Can you imagine the impact for their business if that happens?
That's interesting. I can imagine the financial impact that we hear, and I know the financial impact we hear from our clients just by asking better questions. David, why do you think that people don't follow through for more than 2 or 3 weeks?
Easily. It's easy because listening is hard. We call it active listening. It's hard work. It requires a lot of focus, a lot of concentration. It requires us to resist our own urges sometimes to get defensive. It is hard, hard work. The other reason is in our particular culture, we have a focus on me, right? We have expressions like, look out for number one. What matters to me is the most important thing in my life. It's like a me kind of place. Other countries actually have a very different way of relating with people, and it's easier for them to listen. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of that and I've experienced it very much so. And at this point, I want to share